Welcome folks, one and all, to yet another video tutorial for how to use vehicles in Second Life. I'm Trent Denya, and I'm kind of a nut when it comes to vehicles, boats and airplanes especially. I have way too many in my inventory, and I love each and every one of them. And I'm going to show you all how to fly an airplane in Second Life. Now, there are a lot of different airplanes that you can buy, and some of them are a lot better than others. The quality varies dramatically. And if you're flying for the very first time, you want to give it a whirl, see if you like it. You can't do any better than the aircraft that are on this dock at Aeronautica Sea Base. I would recommend this one right here, the EB Savoia. It comes in a 1-seat and 2-seat versions. I recommend the 2-seat version to start just because it's fun to bring a friend up. And the physics are very forgiving. It's a very user-friendly plane, as are some of the other ones here. But for now, I'm going to show you how to fly by using a different airplane, one of my favorites. It is a Grumman Hellcat, a little World War II plane, an F6F. So we're going to res it right here, and now we got to turn it so it's facing down the runway. So we go to Edit, hold down Control and grab the blue circle and twist it around until it's facing to the west. Alright, so here's our airplane. Just right click it and select Fly. Now there's a couple things you want to do before you take off for the very first time. One thing that I highly recommend you do is you go into Edit and Preferences and go to Input and Camera and make sure that Show Avatar in Mouse Look is checked off. The reason for this is if you don't have it checked off that way, when you go into Mouse Look, you'll just have this sort of blank empty camera and you won't see whatever's around your avatar. But if I go into Mouse Look now, I've got the interior of my plane right here. And it doesn't really matter for practical purposes, but it's a lot cooler. Alright, now this plane has a folded design for its wings to make it easier to store them on aircraft carriers. And only very few planes have this, but I need to type W here to set the wings out into a formation that actually is useful for flying. And to start most planes, you have to type S in local chat or start or ST or some variation. For this plane it's S. So we do that. And she's firing up. Gonna take a sip of coffee here, pardon me. I just gotta wait for the engine to start. Now some planes come with HUDs too, where there are buttons you can press that will do certain functions that you have to type into a buffer normally here, like the local chat buffer. But this one doesn't, which is fine. There aren't too many commands to remember regardless, and all planes will have a manual that'll give you a reference sheet just in case you forget. Alright, now we're going to start. Now, in order to increase throttle, you want to use the page up key, and likewise page down decreases the throttle, but the same is also true for E and C on your keypad. I prefer moving with WSAD and increasing throttle and decreasing with E and C just because my hand feels kind of cramped if I use the arrow keys. It's kind of awkward for me because it's really close to my mouse hand. So first we make sure we're not typing in any chat buffer by hitting escape, and then we hit E and we crank the throttle up. I'm going to increase it to 40% and pull up. Now once in the air, I type G in local chat and then hit escape to get out of the buffer. My gear goes up and I'm flying. It's pretty cool. I've got this exterior view here, but I can go into a cockpit view at any time just by hitting M. And you can see it's really neat. Okay, now for some of the tricky stuff. Second Life wasn't designed with the idea of being user-friendly for vehicles in mind necessarily. You can see up in the mini-map here, the areas are broken up into different regions, also known as sims, and they're essentially different servers. So when you cross from one sim to the other, The server you're on has to send a message to the new server telling you telling it where you're going to appear. And normally this isn't an issue, but vehicles and especially speed can make it somewhat problematic. So usually when you cross from one sim into another, there's a little bit of lag time, maybe a slight rubber banding effect, and you won't be able to control your plane during that. I'm approaching a sim line right here, and I'm going to show you what that's like. Okay, I'm turning, I'm crossing the sim line, and now I can't move my plane at all. But now I can. Bang, it just sort of rubber banded me back. This usually isn't an issue, but you want to avoid a couple of mistakes like crossing a sim line at a diagonal angle right here, because then you're in between up to 3 or 4 different sims, and it can be really confusing for Second Life to figure out where you are, and it can cause you to lag for 10 seconds, 20 seconds sometimes, and it can even dump you out of the world into just some random place off the grid that would require you to actually restart your client. So you just, it's not a huge deal, but you want to be respectful of that and aware of that. Now, speed, like I said, is one of the biggest contributing factors to causing problems when crossing sims. You'll notice I'm only flying at 40% of my throttle here, and that's a good cruising speed. The faster you go, the harder sim crossings are. Now, if I'm dogfighting, I'll generally increase the speed as necessary, sometimes even up to 100, and then I'll try and fight mostly vertically if I can manage it, and try and stay in the same sim. But sometimes the dogfights take you all over the place and there's nothing you can do. You just got to try and do your best. Now that brings me to the next part of this tutorial, which is combat. A lot of planes use this fantastic combat system called Vice. It's entirely consensual, so if another plane flew up behind me and started shooting me right now, nothing would happen. He wouldn't damage me because my Vice combat system is turned off. Now, if I want to turn it on, I just go into local chat and I type Vice on. You'll notice my HUD's changed here. It's turned green. It says airspeed, throttle, Vice, the version of Vice, the life or health of my plane, which is, I believe, 100, damage dealt, kills, deaths, and it lets me know I have bombs loaded. I can drop bombs by hitting B. Are really cool, and the bombs will damage vehicles and objects that are set up with Vice as well. So they don't do anything to don't do push damage. They don't do Linden damage. They only communicate with other Vice-enabled vehicles and objects. Now, I also have cannons on this plane, which are really neat. Zoom in here, and oh, you can't see them right now. Sometimes when you cross a sim, you'll get another kind of a glitch where you won't really see your bullets for a little while. There they are. There they are. Usually, it doesn't happen that often, and when it does, it doesn't last long. But as you can see now, I got bullets, baby. I have unlimited ammunition, which is usual for most airplanes. But if you hold the gun down too long, it'll overheat, which I'll demonstrate in a second. Now I'm just going to try and do a strafing run of some of these barrels down here. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Very nice. You can see down here my gun overheated, which means you can't fire it for a little while. And that's about it. When you get shot down and your plane has 0 health, it'll smoke, it'll light on fire, and it'll plummet to the ground, and you will die in a horrible fiery crash. But all you gotta do is get right up, res your plane again, and you're good to go. And now this video is running a little long, so I'm just going to take us down for a landing. I type G into local chat. I get my gear down, and note I'm always keeping an eye of where I am on the mini-map, because that tells me when I'm about to cross into a different sim. The sim that you're in is usually highlighted a little bit brighter than the other sims, and that's really important to remember. You'll want to zoom out on your mini-map. Some people by default have it zoomed in really far like this, and that is not helpful for this purpose. So zoom it out. And you're also, I forgot to mention this earlier, you're also going to want to increase your draw distance as much as you can get away with it realistically. When I'm in a busy place like a club or a coffee house or something like that, I usually have it down really low to about 64 meters, because in a situation like that, you really don't need to draw half the sim that you're on. But when you're flying or sailing, you kind of want to be able to see as far ahead as possible. So you'll see under my settings here, I have it set to 160 meters, which is more than adequate for air combat and just flying in general. All right, well, we've touched down, and we're going to turn the engine off with S, and we can pull the canopy back just for looks. And there we go. I hope you've enjoyed this first tutorial on how to fly Second Life aircraft. We'll see you next time. Until then.